So I'll try to make it a very brief one and as far as possible simplified kind of. So the first one, what I will do is I'll tell you a bit about introduction about how is the industry sector linked to water resources and other resources as well, like land and energy resources. And then how it's also linked to other non-industrial development issues and also overall society. And then I will share with you a very quick kind of some of the initiatives in Africa that we are working on together with different collaborators, partners, towards promoting a very integrated approach of water resource management. So that will be basically focusing on our work, Global Water Partnership, GWP and our partners. And then I will conclude with a bit of what would be the role of industry towards managing water resources in the future. So the first thing is like a very simple understanding for a very conventional industrial system. For example, like if I'm like from the industry, the way I see water is I have water to access it, then I can use it for my industrial production system, and then I will discharge my wastewater. Sometimes I can treat it. So basically in terms of African context, that's the way we think, okay? So I have the right to access water, and sometimes I may feel like it's just free water, and then I can use it, then I can discharge. Unless there's a regulator, for example, to force me to treat my wastewater. Okay, that's a kind of, a very simplified, conventional kind of approach. But if you see it from a very broader kind of perspective, because there are several actors and different kind of relationships that you have to consider, particularly if you want to secure water for your sustainable and climate resilient industrial development. So there are many other factors, particularly you have to consider. The first thing is, water is used not only by industry, but it's for everybody's use. So, but it's very key for sustainable development. So in addition to industries are main users, but also water is very key, particularly to cope with climate change also. So that's a very good understanding. So if you are trying to kind of develop sustainable industrial development, basically you have to consider water is very key. It's also not only for your sustaining your development, but also for to cope with climate change as well. Then you have to consider the issue of climate change. That's another challenge you have to consider. So that is because climate change, it impacts water security, so that your access for industrial use is also going to be affected. But also climate change also affects your development, including industrial development. Okay? So that's another element we have to consider. Then there's another overall development outside of industry as well. So water security and climate change also impacts development. So you have to consider about other developments, for example, agriculture development, what it is, okay? And so on. But then after all, the overall development should also lead to overall societal development. So what would be your contribution to the societal transformation development? Because water is also key for societal development. For example, like livelihood issues very much connected to water and job creation. So like, if you want to really think of the future industrial development, which will be more sustainable and more climate resilient, so you have to consider all these aspects into your planning process. Then there's another element which is very much linked to the previous one. For example, if you access water, if you want to access water, water is naturally linked to other natural resources, okay? Because water is very much linked to land resource, and also it's linked to energy resources. But industry also requires all these resources also, because industry is not only water, you also land for your establishment, but you also need energy for your processes also. So that's also another element of integrating the different water and related resources. There's also ecosystems which also play a key role as part of accessing water and other resources. So when you see it from that angle, that means you have to consider the issues related to environment, that's climate change, fresh water and land resources. And then if you deal with land and agriculture, you also contribute to hunger and agriculture in terms of sustainable development goals, and also poverty reduction, and then access to energy, and then other social issues, including access to water, health, and also settlement issues. So I mean, if you want to see it from a very broader perspective, so you are not only the sector to play alone, but you have to see it from its integrated perspective. This one, and also from other development issues. Then let me just, within that integrated framework, so the message is water resources requires a very integrated approach. And from that perspective, Global Water Partnership and other partners trying to promote this integrated approach of water resources within the climate change agenda. So we have what they call it with Africa Union, particular Africa Ministerial Council on Water, AMCAO. We developed a program called Water Climate Development Program, basically to facilitate investment on climate resilient water infrastructure and other investment processes in Africa. Okay? So currently we are operating in 18 African countries, but also in 5 transboundary river basins in Africa, particularly from the 5 sub-regions of Africa. In that process, we invested few millions of dollars, euros, but we also leveraged about 20 billion kind of investment for Africa. There are different issues that we are covering, particularly for regional transboundary cooperation, support at national level development plans. I mean, how do you integrate the issue of water security in your national and sectoral development planning processes? Facilitate a bit of investment, particularly infrastructure. Try to demonstrate some actions on ground, capacity building, and also facilitating multi-stakeholder kind of platforms. Because water requires engagement of many stakeholders at different levels. So we try to also facilitate from that perspective. And then there is a discussion, how do we scale up to cover the whole continent? There's a request from AU, AMCAO, to expand the water program to all the countries in Africa. There's also the AU agenda for 2063. It's more of development-oriented agenda, very ambitious agenda. There is a city investment requirement by countries. There is the Africa industrialization agenda, particularly SADC industrial agenda. I think you'll be more interested in that one. And there is a huge infrastructure in Africa, actually, that's prioritized by heads of state civil. There's the issue of job creation, employment. That's a very top priority for leaders in Africa, particularly. That's a very big challenge. And also there is a connection between the global level kind of commitment for everyone to access water supply and sanitary services. It's called the high-level panel on water, and that's led by heads of states at the AU level. Then what we are also doing is like what I talked is about the Water Climate Development Program. But we have also some other more programs. For example, I already mentioned about water, food, and energy interlinkages. So we started already in the SADC region how to promote the water, energy, food ecosystem nexus kind of program, particularly focusing on SADC, but also we're trying to expand to the IGAD region, West Africa, and also the Mediterranean areas. We have also the integrated urban water program. Why I'm mentioning is like, if you are operating as an industry sector, you will be interacting with other water demands around water supply, around sanitation, or water demands for energy and also agricultural needs. Or you have to address issues of climate change. And if you are operating industry around cities, you have to, your industrial investment should be seen within the integrated urban city development and water resource management aspect. And then there's the issue of transboundary, because most of the water resources in Africa are transboundary in nature, so you have to address also that transboundary nature. And then finally, you have to also, your investment should contribute to creating jobs. So that's the way I see it. So the issue now is, and what AMCA and you promoting is like, how can we kind of develop a new, more integrated investment program for Africa, particularly focusing on infrastructure. So now I'm coming to the last session, particularly what can we do in terms of within this integrated framework, And coming from the industrial sector, what could be our role within that integrated kind of framework? The first thing is like, I think we need to shift our conventional understanding of the water system. I mean, like, most people may think still water is very abundant. I can freely access it. I can use it whatever I want. If I have the money, I can just kind of develop. So I mean, that thinking should be really changed. So this thinking of you access water, use it for industrial process and discharge it, and sometimes treat it forward. So it should be more broader kind of understanding of the water system. And that system is more integrated water system. It's integrated naturally. It's integrated with other natural resources because of land and other resources, but also in terms of the human system interaction because of different users. So we have to recognize that one. So we need to appreciate water resource, particularly fresh water is a very scarce resource. I think we already challenged by that one. It's transboundary in nature, as I said, because sometimes you may, if you want to access some of the water resources which transboundary, you have to have a kind of cooperative framework within the countries that are sharing that resource, okay? So that aspect should be also considered. And you have to also consider there are also several users outside of industry, and also there are several users because water has economic value for other purposes, social and environmental value. So you have to also recognize those social, economic, and environmental values of water. So there's also governance issue linked. Okay, how do you manage all this in terms of proper water governance? And then there's institutional issues that you want to put in place if you want to do kind of proper kind of management of water resources. And that is a political issue also. I mean, there are some issues related to conflict, probably, particularly in terms of accessing resources that are of transboundary nature particularly. But the biggest worry again is our future demand for water is increasing, and industry should compete for that one also, okay? But resources are still limited. One challenge is the climate change, the issue, because climate is really affecting our resources, water resources particularly. So what kind of change do you want to bring as industrial sector to respond to the challenges of climate change? As the population grows, there's a huge demand again linked to population growth. There's a resource degradation issue, economic growth, and living standards are changing. Because if economic growth is happening, then the standard of living of people will increase, which requires more demand on water and other resources also. So we need to consider it's holistic kind of systems approach of managing water resources, and just don't think like, I mean, like sometimes we may think like, I have a right to access water, I can use it and discharge it kind of. Okay? Then probably let's move into then what could be the future role of industry within the bigger system approach of managing water resources. So if I have industry, the first thing I have to do is probably I will do a bit of risk analysis. Just evaluate what will be my risk related to water for the future. Okay. I will do the same for climate-related risks, and then I take some actions. The first one is, should I think of investing my resources on the water source, for example, okay, in terms of contribution to the water resource management aspect. I think some of the industries, the private sector, are also investing in terms of, I mean, putting on the watershed management, water resource management, source protection, so that they will continue getting more renewable kind of source of water. Then I would also think in terms of integrating my input for industrial production. For example, like how can I integrate water, energy, land, ecosystem resources for my industrial use purposes, okay? Because if you try to access water, that's linked to energy, land resource, that's linked to ecosystem. So you cannot really dissociate water from the other natural resources. Then I can also think about, because the future is more challenging in terms of security of water, then I have to change a bit of my efficiency in my industrial processes. So I have to bring a bit of water use efficiency through support of some technologies. That means reducing my industrial water footprint. People also talk about the circular economy, in terms of using water again, recycling, reusing, and kind of trying to reduce also use of water resources. Then the corporate governance of the industries should also consider all these aspects actually. Okay? How do you sustain in the future? So that should be part of the policy of the institution of the industry. Stakeholder collaboration engagement. I can't take initiative because water is shared used by different stakeholders. So there are different users. So I have to find a kind of a mechanism. How can I work with the different stakeholders because they are also users of water. So we can also consider that aspect. Then another important aspect is I can also take a lead in terms of introducing some new technologies and particularly to better water management and particularly which will give me more integrated solutions because the problems are more integrated, very complex. So when you target some of the technologies, well, you can also target which technology will give me more integrated kind of solutions. So I think I'll leave it at this level. Thank you for your attention. And probably I think if you want, you can just Google gnlp.org for more information. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.